Hello coaches, thanks for joining us for this interview with Swansea City set piece coach Andy Parslow, going through how to coach set pieces, how to build a framework, how to communicate with players. Absolutely brilliant interview. Andy's going to join us for a webinar, a Modern Soccer Coach webinar on July 26th. Please go to the link below and register and join us July 26th. If you can't make the live event, you'll get a video recording of it for yours to keep. So looking forward to that, July 26th, link below. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. More content coming soon. Modern Soccer Coach, thank you for watching. Enjoy. Andy, thanks so much for joining me today on the Modern Soccer Coach podcast. Really excited to have you on.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for coming on. This is it's always a hot topic, and I'm sure you're aware of the kind of the set piece and the data and the marginal gains around the world. Really, it's become more mainstream with articles and Ground Guru and all this great stuff. And I know you've been on that as well. So yeah. I wanted to get stuck into it. I know there's a lot of coaches that'll be on here that'll, that are working at amateur, pro, semi-pro, college, high school even, that are like, oh, I need help on my set pieces. How do we work it in the weekly schedule? It's almost the first question. So I wanted to hit you with that one straight away is give me a week in the life of your processes and schedule.
Okay, so obviously professional level and working in the Football League, the week varies based on when our matches are. So a good week is Saturday, but the majority of weeks are Saturday, Tuesday. So we fit in 3 games in 7 days, basically. So because the fixture schedule is so congested, I'll try and cram as much in off of the pitch as I possibly can because the time on the grass is so limited. So as an example, we play on a Saturday, we're off and the players are doing recovery on a Sunday. On a Monday morning, so the day before the Tuesday game, they'll have cryotherapy in the morning. They'll come in and do some more recovery. A lot of the starters will be off feet, so they won't train as such, or they'll do very limited work. And the subs from the previous game will train. And then we'll do walkthroughs and set pieces there. So there's hardly any time to implement any new ideas in that period of time. It tends to be tweaks to things that we've done in the past and sort of around our general principles. So those Saturday, Tuesdays, it's cramming in as much one-to-one conversations in the office or in the analysis room, small group chats, meetings, things that are away from the grass because we just don't have the time on the field to go through things, and then add in just a little layer on the grass where we can. Saturday feels like the most amount of time in the world when you're used to Saturday, Tuesday. So I'll tend to layer it a little bit more in the week. So that's where I can be a little bit more innovative, a bit more inventive, creative, and try some different things out, because I think one of the key principles of attacking set pieces certainly is unpredictability. So if everyone watches and analyzes the opposition to death now. So if you're always doing the same things you've always done, the opposition will be able to work it out. And that's something I learned in League One last season, actually, when we got put under a lot of scrutiny because of the success we had earlier in the season. And that's where I sort of learned to freshen things up a bit more and make subtle tweaks here and there. So in those weeks, Saturday to Saturday, that's when you could be a bit more creative. So it might be that on a Monday morning, I'll always review the previous game's set pieces and go through things with players, whether it's someone's lost his man at a corner, might not have resulted in a goal for the opposition, but essentially we haven't defended that set piece, we've gotten away with it. So I might go through the marking style with that player. The attacking ones, the ones that we don't score from, I need to look at why we didn't score from them. Was it execution? Was it decision making? Was it timing? Was it strategy? And sort of whittle down the ideas of all the principles that we have to see which one of those we didn't hit. And then I can go through those with the players. Again, doesn't need to be a big meeting with the whole squad. It might just be the odd one-to-one chat or small group chat here and there. And then I'll start to sow seeds for the next game. And it won't be a case of we're going to review everything we've just done and now here's everything for the next game. It will be done sort of layer by layer throughout the week. So I might start on the Monday. Let's say I've got an idea for the weekend's fixtures because I've already prepped the weekend one. I'll try and go a game in advance if I can. It's not always possible, but I'll try to. I might already know a particular run that I want one of my players to make for this weekend because it suits the weakness of the opponent we're going to play. I might just send that player a video on the Monday morning of someone else that's made that run, might be Ronaldo or someone like that. Just have a look at this, might be useful for the weekend. Then on Tuesday, we might go out and we might practice it on the grass, just unopposed, just ball coming in and making that move from there. Then Wednesday will tend to be off. Thursday, it might add a couple more opponents. And then Friday, we do it with the whole thing. So it can be built up a little bit more. By the time we get to Saturday, it's not just something we've crammed into a 10-minute session on a Friday morning after we've done our match prep. It's something that's been layered throughout the week. So the learning is just a little bit more gets a little bit deeper. So a long way of answering your question. It varies Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday. But basically, it's trying to get in as much work as I can without taking time away from the general coaching team's time on the grass. So as much, I call it coaching in the shadows, so being away off of the pitch in the analysis room, speaking with players, and then I'll just add the bits on the pitch as well.
Very, very interesting. Like coaching in the shadows was, I mean, as a lot of people think, and a lot of college coaches over here have this 2-game schedule, Thursday, Sunday. I talked about this in the last podcast as well with Mike Brown at Bodo Glimt, and he was saying, yeah, well, Europa League, same thing. And I think a lot of people think that at professional level, it's like the NFL. It's every Sunday you play, but in reality, it's you're dealing with sometimes 3 games a week. What I wanted to ask you then was, coaching in the shadows is an art, and that's something that I learned in your podcast, where you're very adaptable with how you've found your way in the game and progressed in the game, and how you find your way in environments. I mean, looking around and adapting into sending a player this, sending a player that. How do you schedule a week? Like, do you sit down before it and say, need to get that there? How do you organize all of this here going into it?
I guess I know sort of what my method is going to be. So I know the amount of work I need to try and get in where possible. And I guess it's a case of looking a few fixtures ahead and just seeing, right, in that week, I'll be able to get this done, then this done, then this done, then. On another week, I might need to cram a bit more into one day. Other times I can stretch out a little bit more. So it really does vary. And the key word, as you said, is adaptable. So in terms of organising, like I said, I know my methodology. I know what my process is going to be. And it's just a case of working through it in the right amount of time, because, as I said, I don't really want to give the players everything in one go, because it's just too much. I've mentioned this before. Players take on so much information, a ridiculous amount of information. They've got their in-possession work, their out-of-possession work, position-specific stuff, what their job is in transition. They've got their own individual prep that they want to do for games. If I'm then adding a load of things on set piece, it partly becomes noise, but it's just too much info. And we then want the players to go out with a clear head and make good decisions. Well, there's too much going on in their head. So it's trying to keep things as simple as possible and stick to what the process is without clouding it too much. But to be honest, I might be doing myself a little disservice. You do have to be organised. You do have to make sure you know what you're doing and when you're doing it, and try not to veer off it too much while still remaining adaptable.
Yeah, it brings us on nicely. So this, it's a very innovative, very new way of coaching, specialist coaches, set piece coaches. There's no real template. Whereas if I'm a goalkeeper coach, you've got 30, 40 years of research where there's full-time goalkeeper coaches. But for a position like yourself, did you get feedback, or was someone advising you on, how to actually structure a job that is at best 5 years old? At most, sometimes the reality of the job doesn't exist, and you're creating it as the plane's taking off.
Yeah. No, basically no. I wasn't given a template or anything like that. But the term that I was given was, it's your baby. So basically, do with it what you will, and obviously you're held accountable for it as you would expect. But sort of feel your way in and work out how you want to do it and go with it from there. And in terms of the feedback's on a match day. Either we score or we don't. Either we concede or we don't. If we've conceded, I know my work hasn't been good enough in the week in terms of the prep. If we haven't scored, I know that I need to improve the strategy or improve whatever it might be. So that becomes the feedback, and I've got no issue with saying I learned from mistakes as I went. Defensively, I learned through goals that we conceded, and from an attacking perspective, I learned through goals that we didn't score. And it's just a constant process, because things change all the time in football. You're always up against a different type of opponent that might have a different marking scheme, or they might use a different type of zonal marking. Obviously, every team's got players at different heights, so each week is a different challenge, and you're having to adapt to that each time and learn as you go. So it still is an ongoing evolutionary process, and it's just one. As you say, it's about 5 years old. It's very much in its infancy. It will continue to grow, I think.
I'm very good friends with the assistant coach here, the goalkeeper coach at the club. He does the set pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And every time there's a set piece, I feel so bad for him. Every time there's a set pieces, he gets off his bench and he walks to the edge of the technical area and he crouches down. And yeah. I always think he's praying when he's doing it. It looks like. But you're saying there is you take responsibility for the goals conceded.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Is that normal? Is that normal for a set piece coach to take responsibility? Because you don't know what you could be up against Peter Crouch.
Yeah, I think. Listen, there are times when you'll come up against a team of absolute giants, and ball goes up in the air. It tends to land on the tallest thing. Basically, it's just physics. So there are times when you look at things and you think there's not a lot we could have done to stop it. Sometimes you don't have to stop it. You just have to put it off or affect it. So I'll talk about sometimes we've got players that are marking players that are just much bigger than them. It's just the reality because we don't have a massive team. And my prep during the week will look at what that opponent does and say, what's his movement like? What's his strength? His strength might just be that he's big, well, in which case you've got to put off his jump because you're not going to beat him in the air, but you've got to make sure if we don't get first contact, his contact is affected. So it's not free contact. His contact is when he's off balance. So it takes less power from the header, or it takes power from the header. So it's less likely that even though they win first contact, it's less likely they score a goal. It should be easier for our keeper to adapt to it, or whoever's landing on second contact to adapt to it, or whatever. So we'll always try and affect it. And I think with everything, I think you have to look at yourself first. So no, it might, if a player's switched off and their man's just run across them and scored, all right, directly, no, it perhaps isn't my fault, but I've got to take responsibility because I've got to make sure that that player in the future, when it gets to a defensive set piece situation, he doesn't switch off. He's got to be this, got to be where he comes alive, and he's got to make sure, well, if anyone does score, it's not going to be my man. So I'm going to make sure, and to be fair, this player I've got in mind because it happened at Bolton last season where he just switched off, and this guy's 6'5", he shouldn't be losing any headers. Guys run across the front of him, headed it in, and I had a bit of a go at half time, quite a go at half time, and it never happened again. And it's a case of, right, I'll take this one, that's on me. I'm going to make sure that you never lose your man, or you never lose your focus in those situations again. Because if I keep going, the players didn't do this, the players didn't do that, I'm never going to grow and get better. And as I said, it's an evolutionary process. And I just think as soon as you start deflecting and looking, where else can I put the blame? I just think you're on a hide into nothing. You're going to become a lot better by looking at yourself first. That said, I do think there's some growth in terms of education, particularly among fans on this side, because you'll see like a team with a set piece coach will concede a goal and everyone's coming for the set piece coach, and that's fine. But if the goal obviously is from a set piece, if a team concedes just a goal in general play, you don't see everyone coming for the goalkeeper coach. So I do think there's sort of a little bit of a trade-off, but my preference is to take responsibility.
You mentioned there about the changing room at halftime and, you know, putting your feelings out there and holding them accountable. And you also said at the start about coaching the shadows. If someone loses their mark, is it addressed in front of everyone on a Monday or Tuesday? Do you think about the person, or how do you manage that relationship side while still trying to hold them accountable for the defensive duties?
100% think about the person without a shadow of a doubt, because remember, the objective is for it not to happen again. If I lose this player by going about it the wrong way, say, for example, they don't want it done in front of everyone, and some players are like that, and that's fine. If I hammer them in front of the whole team, the chances of them doing that again probably heighten rather than reduce, because you want him to sort of take your word for what you're saying. You want them to do what you're asking to the best of their ability. And it might be if there's no connection there between you, if you've got no sort of relationship whatsoever, it's broken down, them trying to do that, I don't want to say for you because it's for them and for the team, but it is a little bit for you as well. I just think it decreases a little bit. You're much better establishing a better connection. Then the chance of them doing it again, I think, reduces drastically if you go about it the right way. So again, there's not a one size fits all approach. On this occasion, the halftime situation at Bolton, I did do it in front of everyone. But I'm not someone, so I'm very direct and I'm very honest, but that doesn't mean that I'm ranting and raving the check. That's not really my personality. So the fact that I did on this occasion, it was completely not out of character, but it's not something that's just noise because it doesn't happen often. It's one of those where we probably have to like fix up and listen a little bit here because Andy's clearly not happy with this or that, whatever. But if I to do that every single week, it just becomes noise. It's just background. Like it's just, oh, here he goes again. So might be a phone call on a Sunday, might be a chat on WhatsApp, just a text. It might be one I'm quite fond of, really, just pulling them into the meeting room and just showing them the clip one-to-one, because when the footage is there in front of you, there's no arguing. And sometimes it's not even a case of I'm saying, this is what you've done wrong. It's what you see. So what do you see here? And we'll go through the process. We'll go through whether it's a corner or a free kick, whatever it is. and they have to see what the error is or see what could have been better. And the key that I always come back to, and I mentioned this earlier, just because it hasn't resulted in a goal doesn't mean we shouldn't address it. Like, as I said, successfully defending a set piece is different to getting away with a set piece. Like, if I don't address all the times where it happens but we don't concede, eventually we'll concede. So I have to make sure that I'm nipping that in the bud, and that's where you've got to be really hot on your standards, really, because it's so easy. Like, you win 1-0, you like, everyone's happy. It's so easy to go, oh, great, right, brilliant, let's have a drink, next game. If you don't look back and reflect on those things that could have been better, you're going to get caught up further down the line. So it's really important that you're addressing those ones you get away with as well.
Brilliant. Principles. Do you have a set of principles that you have for set pieces, and if so, how many do you have that are consistent throughout, week to week?
Yeah, do have principles. The exact number, I'm not entirely sure, because again, it evolves really. And again, as I'm sort of growing in the role and the position as well, there are things that I'll add or take away, things that I'll develop. So there'll be some for attacking, some for defensive. The reason I like principles is due to the fixture congestion. So I wanted to have 3 new set pieces for every game that we played, and I realised very quickly once I got into the job, it wasn't possible. It's I can't say it's impossible, because it could be done, but I don't think it will be done to a particularly high standard, because there's just too much, as I meant, there's too much for the players to take in anyway. So principles are better that are just subtly tweaked based on the opponent. So you're never going too far away from what you do, but as I mentioned, unpredictability is important. So it might be that our principles to go and attack the near post, they remain the same, but we're just going to do it to the far post instead. So things will just tweak slightly. But the defensive ones will tend to stay the same. And again, I can't really put a figure on it, but there'll be things like, for example, one of the principles for an attacking set piece is simplicity. So that doesn't mean just boot the ball in the box and trying to head it in. There might still be something creative about it, but try and keep things as simple as possible, because the more simple something is, the easier it is to take on, basically. And then that means you can every now and then throw in something a little bit more complex, because you sort of got your foundation anyway, and you might just throw in the odd one here and there that's a little bit different to keep the unpredictability as well. So yeah, I can't really put a number on it, but there'll be a few for attacking, a few for defending.
Brilliant. Yeah, brings us along nicely to I was looking at some set pieces on Instat this morning. It's something that I'm fascinated with is coaching the short corner and this unpredictability. So this is you against Accrington Stanley.
Yeah.
So I'll play through it. And this is what I'm fascinated by. All right. So first thing I'm fascinated by is it's a 2v1.
Yep.
Which is quickly becomes a 2v2. But then you've got this player, number 27.
Yep.
How much of this is planned?
This particular one, very little. So to be fair, so one of the principles that I like, because football again changes, and as a coach on the sideline, you can't dictate everything that's happening all the time, and the players are the ones that are playing the game, so they might see something and just act on it, and that's fine. And we score goals from that this season. So I do give the players autonomy. If you see something, just go for it. So something that these two lads have seen, they're young, energetic, hungry, attacking players, the two that have gone to the corner flag. They've seen that Accrington, so this was last game of the season, Accrington are home and dry in terms of where they are in the division. We have to get goals in this game to try and stay up, and we're losing the game. So they've seen that Accrington might be a little bit slow to go and set up. They might switch off a little bit. So you'll notice as the ball's out of play, they're running over to the corner flag, our players. So it's a case of, can we get it back in play as quickly as possible, try and catch some cold. Now with the 27 here, so one of the first key things is the second man that comes out from the angles from the goal rather than from the edge of the box. So because it comes out from the goal, the next free pass is going to be towards the edge of the box. If the angle of the approach comes from the edge of the box, so it's more of a horizontal run, more of a lateral run towards the ball, then the angle is going to be somewhere else. It might be that you cut it back to the taker, or you cut back inside, or the run that 27's made, you might play him in there instead. So this now isn't a routine. This is now them seeing the picture. So the next picture is that Paul Osu, who's the number 37 that we left back, He then arrives towards the edge of the box to receive the next one, takes a shot. This isn't my favourite sort of routine, but again, it's something the players have identified there, and I've got no problem with them trying that out there and then. As long as they can sort of justify why it's being done, I've got no issue with it. I guess it goes the other way as well, where we've had situations where there was a game, for example, so Shrewsbury away earlier in the season. This was around October time. At that moment in time, we've scored the most goals from set pieces in the country. No one better than us in the country, top 4 divisions. The team we were playing at Shrewsbury had conceded the most goals from set pieces in our division. So you're thinking, let's get as many set pieces as we can. Let's nick fouls where we can. If we're going down the line, just play it off and win a corner. Because this is clearly a good strength of ours and it's their weakness. We got 2 corners in that game. And you'll get teams that get 10, 11, 12 corners. Oxford had 13 corners against us at home. We had 2 corners in the game. The first one, we whipped to the far post, headed it across and headed off the line. So great. We already know next corner we get, they're going to be a little bit rattled because they would have prepped loads for us here because they know how good we are at them and it's a weakness of theirs. So let's keep loading it on them. We get the second corner, 2 players run over, play it short and don't even get the ball in the box. And it's those situations where, as a set piece, I'm tearing my hair out because I'm thinking, yes, you've got this autonomy, but have a think, lads. Come on, think about it. So, oh, yeah, have you got it here? Right. So you can see that our centre-back still got a centre-back on the edge of the box. Oh, we do get in the box. Headed clear. Like, there's just nothing that's come of it. Now, if we're going to do a set piece, yeah, there has to be a reason why we're doing the short corner. It can't just be, oh, it's something different. It's got to be a solution to a problem that's in front of us. You can't just make up the solution because you don't know what the problem is yet. Like, there has to be a reason behind it. And on that occasion, it didn't make sense, in my opinion, because of statistically what the differences were in the team, what happened from the first corner that we did. Let's keep going. Let's keep trying to attack their weakness. So there are situations there where the players have autonomy and they can make the wrong decision, and there'll be other situations where they make the right decision and it pays off. So, yeah, so that's not a pre-planned routine that we're going through there. That's something the players have tried, and unfortunately it didn't come off.
Yeah, fascinating. God, this is brilliant. Just when it's an Arsenal there, so it came across there that you played them before Shrewsbury. So when we're on this here, and you're up against, you had 2 corners against Arsenal, and obviously it's Premier League. Like, look at the size. I mean, when you're doing your scout there, what are some things that you would try to expose in a team that Premier League with those type of athletes?
So we should have scored this corner. And the reason we didn't, and again, this comes back to, this is a great example of how much information the players have to take on. So the target area was hit pinpoint by Ant Hartigan, who's our taker. If you just pause it, just hit. So we had Luke McCormick, who's in the yellow boots by the front post. He's read the signal wrong on this corner. He was meant to block number 22, stop 22 from jumping for them. Their number 22. We were then going to use our number 22, who, as you can see, is head and shoulders above his marker in terms of height. He then is due to arrive above the player that's being blocked and head it in the corner. Quite straightforward. But think about the magnitude of the game. Think about, again, the detail that would have gone into the planning. So Maka on this occasion, he's just got the signal wrong, and he's gone out to block the near post man instead of the far post man. But that difference, I think we're 1-0 down at this point. This makes it 1-1. And great from my perspective, a goal at the MS from a set piece. I'd be delighted with that. But it's those little details that if you don't get them right, this is the outcome. So we still managed to work it back out. Second phase is hugely important. We get it back in. They go and defend that instead. But those little details here and there, just by one player just getting it slightly wrong, can change the course of the set piece. So the thing with it, like, you have your strategy and you try to attack the opponent's weaknesses as best you can. Ultimately, football's played by humans and they make mistakes. So Maka there at Arsenal was a great example. Just made a mistake. It doesn't mean the goal's impossible to score, because Ben Hennigan's number 22 for us, could still potentially get above his marker and the zonal player. That's a possibility as well. On that occasion, he didn't. So that's football. Then that's when, as I say, second phase is so important. That's when you fall back on your principles to how can we work the situation to get another chance instead.
Hello, coaches. Take a quick break here. If you're enjoying this interview with Andy, and I'm sure you are, please click on the link below and join us for a full webinar with Andy to detail how you would organise and train your team during the pre-season period. So he's going to join us for a pre-season webinar, Modern Soccer Coach, July 26th. If you missed the live event, you get a full video recording of it as well for yours to keep forever. Click on the link below. Join us July 26th. Thank you. Here's Andy.
Just on that, talk about the information, and one thing that still floors me in 2022 is this: you're getting a sub on, and maybe it's a sub, someone's pulled something or something's come up, and you got to get a sub on quick. So you've got to come up with your board or your notepad or whatever it is, or your iPad to try to give them instructions. I mean, what's your processes around making sure that the sub has that information? Because there must be 20 things going through that player's head as well,
Yeah, without a doubt. So I think the first thing is, this is where principles rather than new routines all the time come into play. So all the players in the squad should be familiar with, particularly from a defensive perspective, this is what we do. So they know when they slot in, they know that, let's say we're defending a wide free kick, they know when our line drops. They know where our line should be positioned. They know where in the line they should be, because they've done it so many times, and because we're trying to ram home the message as much as we possibly can. Second thing is, I'll always do a squad meeting the day before a game, where I'll go through the opposition's set piece strengths and weaknesses, how we're going to try and exploit their weaknesses, and how we're going to try and limit or restrict their strengths as best as possible. So the players should be prepared for what's coming. They should know who the main threats are for the opponent based on what we prepared in advance. You hope when the sub's being made that it's a like for like replacement. So you're replacing let's say I use Man City as an example. Phil Foden's being replaced by Bernardo Silva. So there's not too much disparity in terms of height. Whereas if you're taking off, let's say it's Laporte at City, he's coming off, and Bernardo Silva, Silva's not going to do the same job that Laporte does from a set piece, because it just doesn't make sense. So you hope that they're going to be like for like replacements, because the players coming in will just fill in similar roles to what they normally do. The challenge comes when it is those sorts of situations where we want to take off our big number 9, for example, to throw on a smaller forward. You've got to then try and move things about. And it's just a case of working quickly, working under pressure, and keeping it, again, as simple as you possibly can. My preference is always to make sure the defensive ones are right. So make sure that the player going on knows exactly what to do defensively, because that's where things are a little bit more objective. They're a little bit more black and white. These are your roles, responsibilities. Sometimes I'll send on an attack and I'll say, just go and score, or just run to the near post or something like that. Go and attack the ball, something like that. If I've already given him loads of things for defence, and I know that we're under pressure to get him on as quickly as possible, and the ball's just gone out of play, attacking ones, just go and attack the ball, or just go and block this player or something like that. Just keep it as simple as possible.
We had Ben Gardner on the podcast, this must be 2 years ago, maybe more, and he was talking about working with Pulis, and obviously Pulis's reputation as set pieces is very, very high. But he was basically talking about, the fact that when a leader values set pieces so much, it makes his job as a number 2, and he was coordinating all that. It makes it a lot easier. How have you found working with the head coach and the leadership in the clubs? And do they have their own principles? How do you merge yours and theirs, and how do you go through that process?
That was so far the first head coach I worked for was Mark Robinson, and he was the one that brought me in as set piece coach. He's the one that identified the need for the role, and secondly me to fill the role, basically. So that was never going to be an issue in terms of a working relationship. And as I said, the term that was used was, "It's your baby." I'll still speak and converse with the other coaches and the manager or head coach, and get opinions, because 6 brains is better than 1. So I like an environment where we can challenge each other as well. So I'll put things forward, and I want people to try and challenge it, because it tests the strength of what I'm saying and what I'm doing before I then roll out to the players. Then Robbo unfortunately lost his job during the season. New manager came in, and it was very much a case of you just take care of the set pieces. And it wasn't like, if I still went to him with things, but it was just no, that's your thing. So I've been fortunate to a point, I guess, because I haven't been micromanaged as such. But I still think it's important for the head coach or the manager to guide it a little bit, for example, because I think ultimately results are their responsibility. So as I said, I'll always take responsibility for goals that we concede from set pieces, but really it's the manager that has to front up to the media and face the fans and that sort of thing. So I think it's important that they have a hand in what's going on as well. Otherwise, it's like it's 2 different sports, and you've got 2 different managers, a set piece manager. I don't think it makes a huge amount of sense. But I found the working relationship positive so far. If a manager or head coach is getting in a set piece coach, clearly they must value it. They must value the person that's doing it. Otherwise, they wouldn't bother. So I think you're already sort of onto a winner with that. And then really how that relationship goes just depends entirely on what your output is, on what your success rate is. Like if you're not scoring and you're conceding, the relationship is probably going to be a little bit more fractured because you've got to pull your finger out because it's your responsibility. If the goals are flying in and you're not conceding the other end, then everything's good. You're going to carry on.
See, when delivery, for example, so important for set pieces and getting that right type of delivery. Do you go through, or is ball striking something that will you take a few players aside, or how do you improve? That's probably one question, is ball strike. Another question is like, how many takers do you have? Do you change it, or do you have the same taker all the time?
I think you have. So personally, I have a list of preference for takers, but the player at the top of the list doesn't always play. So when he plays, he'll take them. He'll take all of them. If he's not playing, then I'll use someone else. But then I've also got to look at things like who I'm leaving back for set pieces. Now, sometimes someone who's good at taking them is actually our best option to leave back because they've got enough speed to defend the counter-attack. They've got enough intelligence to see potential threats before they happen and organise things. So I've got to weigh up, are they better off taking it, but it's a long recovery from the corner flag, or are they better off in that position there? If I put him back, have I got someone who's equally as good or nearly as good as my next in line, or do I need to find another solution? So I'll have sort of a list of preference, and it just depends on the match day selection. So I'll tend to have an idea probably a few days before the game what things are looking like. Sometimes I'll hedge my bets and I'll take a couple over to do a few practice runs. But I'll sort of go down list of preference or list of priority. And in terms of the ball striking, it's an interesting one because I was never a pro. I didn't play pro football, so I can't execute things as well as the players can from a technical perspective. So it's difficult for me to put the ball down and say, this is what you do, and then go and do it, because I can't do it as well as they can. Otherwise, I'd be doing their job. I'm much better as a strategist. I'm good at solving problems and unlocking puzzles and that sort of thing, and seeing where strengths and weaknesses are and how to exploit them. So then I can say to the player, or sit down with the player and show them, look, this is what I'm seeing. As a result, I think this type of delivery to this area is our best way of unlocking this team. Let's go and practice it. So the player then knows, okay, if I'm this type of ball strike to this type of area, right, okay, this is what I need to do. And they'll be able to cover that side of it. So they're the sort of the players that have the technical execution, and I'll provide the strategy and the plan.
Moving it on then to your own journey, and as well, like you talk about the lack of, like, if a coach brings you in as a set piece coach, they're obviously open to the idea. How do you get players? Because there's a big difference between, we like the idea or something, and then you walk in and you have something different, and you start to, the daily lives of people start to become shaken up a bit, and there's like biggest creatures of habit, I think, are coaches and players. And so how do you, or how have you maneuvered around change and unlocking that puzzle in people's heads?
So I was fortunate initially coming in at Wimbledon because Mark Robinson was the head coach, and he'd basically created and brought up the academy, and the first team squad had a lot of academy products in there. So because it was Robbo's idea to bring in a set piece coach, and I also coached in the academy as well. I wasn't in there anywhere near as long as Robbo was. I was only in there 2 years, I think it was, or a year and a half. But because the players were playing under Robbo, it was a lot easier for me to get buy-in from the bulk. The challenge was to get the senior players on board, those that hadn't come through, those that had played elsewhere, played 300-odd league games, various different managers. It was then getting them to say no, or to get on board with things that I'm saying and asking them to do. And the best way to do it is with results. You can't argue with when the ball hits the back of the net from a set piece. You just can't argue against it, whether it's exactly what the plan was or not. And I'll come on to that in a bit. It's still an outcome. So you can't say, well, no, I think we should have done this. Yeah, but the ball went in the goal. So you can't really argue against it. So I think I was fortunate in that sense that I had the bulk of the squad already because they came through the academy. And then as things went on, and I had a poor start in terms of us scoring goals. So I felt as though confidence in me dipped, not my own confidence from the players in me dipped after probably about 10 games or so, we conceded 1 or 2 and we hadn't scored yet. We'd come close, but we hadn't scored. And then once we did finally score, we scored quite a few. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we got to a point where we scored the most in the country earlier this season. So by that point, everything that you say the players are just going to do, because they believe in, they trust you basically a little bit more. So really, yeah, I was fortunate initially with the relationship that I had with, or the relationship the players had with the manager. And then it just sort of built it from there. But I think what goes a long way as well is your own personality. So if I came in, because as I said, I struggled initially. If I came in and I was just a volatile personality, not good to be around, just poor manner with the players, that sort of thing, doesn't matter if we score 1 or 2 goals, they're still going to resist. I think if you can be a good person as well, and you can take an interest in the players and actually build a connection with the players properly, like have chats with them, find out about their family, that sort of thing, it just strengthens the relationship, and it just makes it easier to get buy-in further down the line. And then, as you say, players and coaches are creatures of habit. So when you try something that's a little bit different, if you've got that good connection with them, then a lot more likely to say, all right, let's do it. Let's give it a go. Let's spend an extra 20 minutes practicing after a session. Whereas if you haven't got the relationship, probably not going to happen.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that piece on, well, I thought it was a consistent theme. Your interview with Saul was, you know, being a good person and being a good communicator. And we kind of generalize good people skills as coaches today. We're like, oh, that's a great person, because we want to show them that we're their friend on social media. But in reality, when you get into an environment, it's a lion's den in terms of players, coaches, like, and having to maneuver around that every day. How do you learn that if you have a young coach that is unaware? Do you just learn by experience?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, and to be fair, to be clear, being a good person doesn't mean smiling and nodding and agreeing and trying to be everyone's friend. I think it's just being genuine and being honest. So I'm as honest, I'm direct and honest as I come, and it's been to my detriment at times where I've not been in an environment that's been a great advocate of that sort of thing. They sort of want more yes men. But when you get into the right environment where that's welcome and people want you to challenge you, like you say, it's a lion's den, and I always thought about it like if you think back to like school days, the popular kids, if you like, they tend to be the sporting ones. They're ones that play football and that. And you think all the players that are in a first team squad, they've probably gone through their entire school life being the top dog. And then suddenly they get into a first team environment where everyone's the top dog because they've all had that same sort of experience. Not everyone, but a lot of them. And trying to sort of go in and be sort of direct and macho with them, I'm not sure that trying to match them for that is exactly the right way to go. It's just being genuine, but you've got to be able to be honest. You've got to be like, they respect you so much more if you just tell them the truth. And if that's saying you weren't at it today, or this isn't acceptable, or whatever it is, whether it's an on the pitch or off the pitch thing, they respect you more for saying it. I don't know who to attribute this quote to, but there's a quote, I'm sure you've heard it before, that your standards basically are the norm is the lowest standard that the leader is willing to accept. So if you're letting things slide, letting things go, that's going to become the norm. So you've got to make sure that if you're just honest with people all the time. And for me, that is being a good person. It's holding people to high standards. It's digging in yourself as well, not expecting other people to do things that you won't do. So if you're going to hammer an under 18 for not picking up a bottle that's lying on the pit, well, you've got to be willing to do that yourself as well. That's being a good person, in my opinion. And I just think that I found it to be beneficial throughout my journey so far, and I think it's the right way to be. But it's not always easy. And like bringing it back to your question, how is it to sort of manage that in this sort of environment? It's very easy to regress to whatever the norm is. So I've been in situations, or I've been in environments where the standards are way below mine, and I have to credit my missus here, because she's someone that's kept me in check on it in the past when I was younger. You've got to keep to your standards. And if those standards are lower than you, you've got to either get out of that environment or bring everyone else up to your level. You can't just regress to that, because then you're doing yourself a disservice. You're doing the players you're working with a disservice. You're not giving the best that you possibly can to what you're doing. So it's making sure you're maintaining those high standards as well.
It's good to have a significant other when you go home and moan about it and they put you in your place, isn't it? It's good to have that.
No, to be fair, I mentioned to you off air before that I used to coach 5 days a week, teaching PE, coach 5 evenings a week in performance academies and club academies as well, coach at the weekends. The girl that was with me then, I married a couple of weeks ago. So she's been with me the whole way through. So a massive credit to her for keeping me in check. Brilliant.
Congratulations. That's awesome. Brilliant. your journey again in Saul's interview, I found it really kind of refreshing. Is that you're looking for, you don't have the ex-pro background to get in, so you come in through an academic background. The analysis, which of course I really like the analysis side myself, but you also then decided to accompany the analysis with the coaching. Again, was this something that you took a stand back and you were quite deliberate with that, or was the analysis something that you thought this suited your personality, or how did you merge the two? How did you know to merge the two together, I guess is what I'm asking.
I think the analysis role at Luton that I took up after I finished uni, I took that because the opportunity was there. I wasn't in my last year at uni thinking, right, next year I'm going to go into analysis because that's what I want to do, because I've always wanted to be a coach. That's what I did before. I did the analysis, like at Sunday League level and that sort of thing. But coaching on the grass and then coaching on the sidelines on a match day, that's what I enjoy. I'm a very competitive person and I like to sort of have that impact in those areas. So I saw the analysis as an opportunity. Now, what I was good at while I was at uni was recognising that I wasn't an ex-pro. I don't have a name in the game at that moment in time. There's so many people in this country alone that will want to do what I want to do in the future. So what am I going to do that's different to them? So there'll be things like, well, I'm not going to go out clubbing 4 times a week at uni while you guys are. I'll stay in and I'll start learning the language, or I'll do this, or I'll go and shadow coaches or something like that. So I can do those sorts of things. But then when I graduate, where do you go from there? So ideally, I want to go straight into a coaching role. Well, there's not going to be a queue of clubs waiting to bring me in. I'm just a guy with a sports science degree among however many others. So what can I do now that's going to separate me from other people? So that analysis opportunity came up. It was an unpaid internship. So I already knew, because it was unpaid, at least half the people on my cohort at university not going to be interested. So I'm already ahead of them, no problem. So then I need to look at, well, thankfully, the things that I've done throughout uni I got my level 2 and did different coaching bits on the side while other people were out clubbing and partying. I still did that a little bit as well, but not as much as other people. That probably sets me apart from others that are going for it. So I'm probably a little bit ahead of them now as well. So I just threw an application in and thankfully got the position. So now I'm thinking, right, I've got a degree and now I've got this year's experience or pending experience with the first team. So that's now going to separate me from loads of other people. But there'll also be X amount of people that just graduated, got a degree and have done an internship or done a year. And what am I going to do to separate from them? Well, while I'm on this internship, I'm going to get my B license. So I got my B license. So it's just constantly looking at things. How am I going to separate myself from other people? And football's such a popular industry, and you just have to look at the amount of people or coaches or managers that are out of the game that aren't in a job at the moment, that are all looking to try and get back in. And to just think that someone's going to turn up and go, Andy, here's a job. Not going to happen. You've got to do things that are going to separate you. So I looked at things like that. So I've tried to learn different languages. I've tried to go out and meet different people. I've traveled abroad. So you mentioned Border Glimt earlier. I went out and spent a week there a couple of years ago with them before they got into the Europa League, and spent a week trying to just learn something a little bit different from how another professional club operates, and just constantly doing different things. And then, as I said, the objective has always been to be a coach at the highest level. Eventually, potentially, I'd like to be a manager as well. But I'm 31 at the moment. I've hopefully got a long way to go. And just keep on looking to try and separate myself from other people and keep pushing things on and driving high standards. And those opportunities, I believe, will present themselves.
Fantastic. The unpaid internship, and I think maybe we're changing our mentality. It's getting now in America and the US. I think coaching's a quite lucrative profession, to be honest. People are now turning their nose up at unpaid, and I think social media is kind of through that as well, especially in the analysis area, where if you put up an internship position, 5 big names will probably hammer it. But what I liked about, I actually think the majority of work I've done, probably 75% of it's been just for free.
Yeah.
I really liked you said on Saul's interview, you said, if I don't do it, somebody else is going to do it.
Exactly. So then when your 2 CVs go into a role, well, they've got that experience. So why would I let them get ahead of me?
Yeah. I love that. The mentality then to go ahead. And that was another one of my questions was, whenever you're in the role, and as well as being a Lions Den, it is a frantic life in a professional club where it's, you know, you're at the highest level doing 3 games a week and with pressure and all that there. How do you then keep that professional development head, you know, and keep the next thing and the next what's coming next in the, you know, keep ahead of new thinking?
It's difficult, to be fair, to try and cultivate time to dedicate to your own development is complicated. However, the best development that you have is the experience you're going through. So there's the Saturday, Tuesday, the games, the fixtures, the training, everything, and sort of working and living the day-to-day life. That's probably the best development I can have at the moment because it's constant and immediate feedback. Like, really, I think the best thing I can do at the end of every day is write down everything that I've learned, everything I did that I thought was positive, everything I think I could do better, and just keep trying to improve day by day. I would like to be able to do more. So as I said, I try to learn languages. I speak Spanish and I'm trying to learn Portuguese. Just had a little girl's 16 weeks now. So my time, I used to get up at 5 o'clock and do a couple of hours work before I went into training. So I'd do like I'd either watch a game or I'd do hour and a half of language learning or whatever. Unfortunately, her body clock's now set to 5 o'clock. So I've had to now start getting up at 4 o'clock just to get an hour in before she wakes up. And sometimes she doesn't wake up till 6, so I get an extra hour. So it's fitting it in where I can. I always think people say, oh, I haven't got time to do this. I haven't got time to do. Everyone's got time to do these things. It's how much value you place on those things that you're looking to do and where you can fit the time in. But you can always find time to try and improve yourself. Might not be easy, and it certainly should be difficult. If it wasn't difficult, then everyone would do it. But if you're really serious about improving and trying to get to the next level, you have to find the time, or make the time at least, to dedicate yourself to improving. Because I've personally found the best development that I had in terms of my understanding of football was through analysis that I've done. So I do a lot of analysis for the Coach's Voice, who are quite big on social media. And
brilliant site. Yeah.
And my game knowledge, once I started working for them, which was in 2018, I think it was, just went through the roof in terms of the detail because I was watching and analysing games all the time. Now, anyone can do that. The amount of football that's on TV at whatever level, anyone can sit down and just... I'm not watching it in tactical cam as much as I'd like to. I'm watching it on the broadcast stream. So anyone can sit down and stop and rewind and work out things, and you're not going to see everything straight away, but the more you do it, the better you're going to get. It's just actually putting in the time and sticking with it. So I think it's a very long way of saying, I think in terms of my own development, I try and fit it in where I can. I try and make the time as much as I can. I'm fortunate as well that we have away trips where we're on coaches for 3 hours or trains for 3 hours, staying at hotels. I can fit in a bit there, here and there. And yeah, just fit in where you can and finding the time.
Brilliant. Last couple for you. I've nearly made it through the whole thing without repeating any of Saul's question, but I want people, you know, if they're listening for this long, they're obviously intrigued by it. I want to put the link to Saul's interview in the notes to go and listen to that as well, because what I really enjoyed about that was your honesty and a little bit of vulnerability to be like, I made a mistake in this, but it was again a constant theme where it was like, and I looked back and reviewed and you know, and I heard that a few times. Is that something that you said there about reflections? Is that something you're quite deliberate with in your processes, or is that just natural for you? Quite a reflective person.
Probably a little bit of both. I think. I think so. You would have heard it in Saul's interview. I give a lot of credit to my first academy role at Brentford, because we had an environment there which was huge on reviewing. So I mentioned we used to sit for an hour after sessions, all the coaches, and just rip each other's sessions apart and just took the smallest little detail. We just hammer it. And because you make sure when you come back for the next session, that detail's spot on. Doesn't matter what it was, you make sure that's right. And then they'll come back with something else. So if you think about that, every session you're getting a little bit better. You're not making those same mistakes. So I think it's probably partly personality, but I think that environment as well, that environment of honesty and that review process probably shaped it a little bit more. It's massively important. It's hugely important because I think you end up just doing things without conscious thought of why you're doing them if you're not reviewing. Whereas I think if you're looking back and thinking, right, when I did this, I really like that interaction or the way I put that point across, I'll use that method again. Or I don't feel as though I was really, I don't think I really held the room when I made that point. So I need to look at What was my body language like? What was my tone of voice like? How long did I take to make the point? Was there anything visual there to help illustrate the point? Just looking back on as many details as possible. And I'm not saying that you make the mistake once, you're going to get it spot on the next time. You might make the mistake in a slightly different way, but it might also be a little bit better than it was. So it's just constantly, like, I don't think anyone does everything perfect all of the time. So there's always going to be something that you can try and improve on. If you don't review it, if you don't reflect on it, you're probably not going to make those improvements. I think if you're not reflecting and reviewing on your own personal performance, and this comes back to what I said earlier, you always look at yourself first. We live in a society where everyone wants to put blame somewhere. Right, something's gone wrong. Who are we going to blame for this? Whereas really, you need to look inwardly first. You need, right, what could I have done better? It might not have been my direct responsibility, but could I have helped in some way? Could I have done something differently that might have affected the outcome? And I think once you sort of you work off of that basis, I think the review and the reflection comes a bit more naturally.
Brilliant. And then on the other side, the planning side, you know, a lot of coaches listening to this that are probably on their summer holidays or that are having a little break and about to start pre-season in a few weeks. A lot of coaches that have zero processes in, and it's quite natural having zero set piece processes in their environment, and maybe they've only got one coach, or maybe they don't have an assistant, and you're sitting here planning for a new season and saying, you know, I'm gonna set a goal to be more deliberate about, or more intentional, getting better in that department. What would be a piece of advice or a couple of pieces of advice for them?
Be consistent with it. So I think at the start of a new season and at the start of a new calendar year, so many people get this this rush or this desire to think, no, this year or this season I'm going to do this, and this. And by, let's say it's a new calendar year, by February it's stopped. So it's consistency, and this again will come back to reviewing and reflecting, consciously working through. So this is what I want to do. Yeah, okay, this is what I want, but how am I going to do it? So making sure you've got a methodology, a plan for, I don't know, I'll use language as an example. So I want to learn Portuguese. Now, just by saying, right, this year I'm going to do it, it's not going to make it happen. I need to know when I'm going to be learning it, how often I'm going to be doing it, and what methods I'm going to be using. So am I going to be reading books, listening to radio, listening to podcasts, conversing with people when I can, building up vocabulary online, whatever. I need to know what I'm going to be doing, when I'm going to be doing it, so that each week I know, right, this is how I'm going to hit that target, because each small step that I'm making, when I look back in December of that year, all those steps add up to one big improvement. So the key thing for me is being consistent and sticking with it. I've been guilty of it so many times in the past of thinking, right, I'm going to do this. And then it just feels like the first week, 2 weeks, you're spot on all the time, making sure and then I can't bother today. As soon as you've had that first day off, it's gone.
Last one. Again, you talk about quite a lot on youth development in Saul's interview, and I found it, again, very rare for a set piece specialist at the highest level to go down there. You normally have people that are specialists are kind of talking about the professional level the whole time. But it made me think that if we talk about, and you reverse engineer it, you're working with senior players, professional level, high pressure, high stakes, and we saw in the Arsenal clip, and 6 foot players, good in the air, detail, all this thing. Do you look at the youth level now and think we should put more time into being better in the air, or can you improve heading? When should you? It's a very basic question, but like, when is that a specialist skill that maybe we should be spending more time to, or do you just think it's okay the way it is?
I don't think it's okay the way it is. I don't think it's any more specialist than passing the ball. It's still an action of moving your body towards the ball to try and send it to another destination. It's just a different way of doing it. Now, the heading technique is one thing. Yeah, you can try and learn, but something that I've really learned since I've been in first team, because I was coaching under 14s 1 week, and then the next week I'm with the first team. So I went directly from development football into first team football, and that was among other staff that have been in development football as well. So we always try to relate it back to what we used to coach and things. And there are things we felt that we got right and things we felt that we got wrong. Things like the academy game, certainly in this country, a lot of the games look exactly the same. High press, play out from the back, play through the thirds. And that's great. That's no problem at all. But you'll get players that go through that and do nothing else. And they come on loan to a lower league club and they don't know how to pick up a second ball. They don't know how to run the channel. They only know how to show up towards the ball and then play combinations, play out back throughs, that sort of thing. They don't know how to see a game out. They don't know just all these other parts of the game they're not taught well enough, and it's because it's not fashionable. And I guarantee, if a coach in academy level, let's say under 14s, for example, starts talking about second balls on a match day, runs in behind, missing out the opponent, playing in behind, so playing more direct, opposition, other people are going to be saying, well, he's just playing to win. He's only focused on results, not development. Well, it's development, it's learning, it's education. And it actually, another thing that I learned when I came to first team football, it's no different at that level. It's still education. It's still learning the game. It's still, no one knows everything there is to know about football. There's always things that can evolve and improve. And I think as soon as you land on, right, this is what we do at academy level, I think at that point you've got it wrong. Because you need to be able to teach more sides of the game. You need to be able to evolve things as much as possible. So I think, yeah, again, it's a long way of saying, I think at youth level and lower league level and that sort of thing, we need to be able to teach those things better. But I think the coaches need to be able to understand those things better, because I've never been on a coach education course that talks about second balls. But they're so important. Pep Guardiola, when he arrived at Man City, one of the first things he said is, I never realised in England how important the second ball is. Now, this isn't a coach you associate with second balls, but I look at, when I watch them, Rodri, for example, unbelievable picking them up. His anticipation of where the ball's likely to land, because bear in mind, a lot of teams against City will play direct because they think it's a weakness against City, but he'll land on so many because he anticipates it. Now, this is a player at the very top level, so why do we only look at the worldy reverse passes and the whip crosses in behind and the third man? Why do we only look at those? We've got to look at it because it's all football. Everything ultimately, when you get to senior level, is geared towards trying to win a game of football. Now, if you're not equipped with the tools to do that, the chances of you winning that game of football diminish. So we're actually doing players a disservice at youth level by not teaching these things. It's not the be all and end all, but it's something that needs to improve, in my opinion.
And when you're trying to break into that senior side, a coach will rarely start a player who's a defensive liability, right? At best, they'll bring them off the bench, or she'll bring them off the bench. So if they don't have that defensive foundation, like you mentioned in that other interview about the detail in the fullback getting out and stopping crosses, it's never talked about with today. And I don't work at, I used to, 15 years I worked as a college coach. I used to watch a lot of U14s, 16s, 18s games. And again, the intensity of defensive actions used to drive me mad. And sometimes I wonder now if and again, you're coming from, you're in a position to comment on reverse engineering something coming from an environment. Should we be spending less time doing a 6v4 very sophisticated rondo and more time doing, get out, stop, block, come back,
I think so. Again, it's always going to be a balance, and ultimately it's always going to be about what the players that you're working with need. So if you're working with, I don't know, a group of 6 players, and they just happen to be your central midfielders and they're, I don't know, pivots or 10s or whatever they might be, then that action of getting out and stopping crosses or dealing with overlapping runners, probably not the most important thing for them to be doing. There might be more important things. If you've got fullbacks and wingers, they've got to be working on that a lot. So one of my favourite things to do, and this was with my under-14s group that I had, and I do it every week, every Monday, it was position-specific work. And they would get endless repetition of things that they need to be able to do on a Sunday or a Saturday, whenever the game is, because ultimately that's what they're, use the term loosely, that's what their job is. My centre-back doesn't necessarily need to be doing a load of third-man runs and playing in this possession practice that looks incredible and looks really neat and tidy in that, and people say, what great football, and that's great, we can use that as well. But my centre-back needs to know about what, like, the position of his hips when he's, like, the timing of when he's going to drop and how he's going to defend 1v1, how he's going to delay things, how he's going to cover a fullback that's been caught out. They need to know these things, but they need repetition of doing it, because, as you said, a first-team manager is not going to bring someone in that's a liability. The most important thing for a first-team manager is that they can trust the person they're bringing in. If they can't trust them, they're not going to do it, because it's not the player that's going to get sacked. It's the manager that's going to get sacked if the results aren't good enough. So the manager has to be able to trust that this player isn't going to cost them a game, cost them a result, cost them a goal, whatever. But we need to, at the youth levels, be putting in those, like, I'm not talking at under 9s and under 10s here, but as they go through the programme, they need to get better and more frequent exposure to those sorts of things than they're getting so far.
Fantastic. It's something for everyone there. You've got the set piece stuff, youth development, we've got professional development. This has been fantastic. Andy, thank you so much. Loved it.
Well, thank you for having me on. It's been fun.